Okay, we are good.
Yeah.
All right, so go and
Oh,
tell us your name and where
I
you're
think you're cutting
located.
out. My name is Tia Luker-Putra, and I am in Shanghai, China.
Very nice, very nice. So tell us what subject you teach in the age group of students that you have.
Sure. So I teach year 5, which is grade 4, and I teach all the subjects, but my specialty is science.
Cool, and where did this, I guess you could say passion or your favorites in science come from?
I started as a high school French teacher, and then when I moved overseas, I kind of needed to find like a new niche. And my wife was really into English, and so I really just wanted to try something different because English is such a like a type A kind of topic for people, and I'm not a type A kind of teacher. And so I started doing science fairs and looking at science fairs. So I started doing that, and then my like love of elementary science kind of grew from that. And then went on to a few other schools where I was running a department and growing curriculum and all that kind of stuff. And so then I realized if I was going to be running a department, I should probably have an education. So I went back to school and got my master's in elementary education. And so now I do a lot of stuff in STEM and different things like that. Yeah.
Fantastic. So what led you to go from Canada all the way to China? Was it just something new you wanted to try? What made you want to go overseas?
I had taught overseas for 2 years in Korea, and then we went back. That's where I met my wife, and then we went to British Columbia, and we were there for 2 years. And then that's the year that BC went on strike, and so we started looking at going back overseas because the benefits of teaching overseas are amazing. And so we just thought we were sick of being poor and having no money. And she was going through her master's degree, so I was the only one teaching. And so between the strikes and everything that was going on, we just kind of decided that we wanted to go back overseas. And I didn't want to go back to Korea and try and redo Korea, so we thought we'd try China, and ended up in a small little place called Kunshan, which is south of Shanghai. And it's like they consider it a village of 1 million people. And we were there for a year, but it was in the middle of nowhere. And then we moved into Shanghai the following year. We've been here for 6 years now.
Very nice, very nice. I had a few friends in college who have taught in Korea, and they absolutely loved the experience. It was challenging, but they really learned a lot about not only themselves as a teacher, but themselves as a person. Since then, they've come back to the States, but it's something that they really, enjoyed that experience. So when your students are
Yeah,
in
you
your
learn a lot. You learn a lot about culture.
absolutely,
Oh,
absolutely.
sorry.
So no, you're so when your students are in your classroom, what is a typical ideal lesson that you like to present to them?
Um, I would say something that is engaging and exciting for them. I want them to just kind of want to learn it, feel excited by whatever it is, interested and curious, because, curiosity is such a fire starter for whatever it is that you're learning about. So, it might be something that I come up with off the fly, because I do often do that, where I just go, there's got to be a way to do this. And I see something or hear something that I think is really going to get them going with like a video or an activity or pictures of something that's related to the world. Because usually that's what gets them, is relating it to something that's in real life. And, that's kind of the thing that will be the catalyst for whatever it is that we're working on. So I try to do something different all the time, because, you could fall into the routine of video, start the lesson, video, start the lesson, video, start the lesson. But, I'm always trying to try something new, because I feel like if I'm bored, then they're bored. And so I get bored pretty easy. So I try to make sure it's different every time.
That's an important thing to learn. If you're bored, then they're probably bored as well. So that's, like I said, a good thing to remember when creating lessons. So since you have taught science and you've had colleagues who have taught science probably for a longer period of time, how has the subject changed or evolved in the past handful of years since you have been immersing yourself in the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's changed a lot in the sense of what the answers could be and how you can get to those answers. So engineering is kind of the new up and coming, you know, and it's not new, but certainly the one that teachers are engaging with more often now, instead of the scientific method, so that they're leaving the answers to be much more open-ended. And that's why I think I like teaching engineering so much, because you can teach these same things you would with the scientific method, but with the engineering process, your kids can get to an answer however they get to the answer, and there is no one specific solution for the problem that they're facing. So I think that's been a big shift, shifting the idea that teachers aren't necessarily the holder of all of the knowledge and solver of all the problems, but more that teachers are facilitating that ability in the students to be able to come up with the answers to those problems without it being, well, what's the answer? How do I get there? It's just, I will help you get there, and I might not actually know the answer, which happens. But having that confidence to just say, I don't know, but we can get there. And I think that's a big change from, you know, science teacher at the front doing an experiment to now it's kids with all the materials trying things out and getting to maybe an answer the teacher wouldn't have even thought of.
Fantastic. So do you think it's taken the right direction and going to more of an engineering path with the way, you know, future jobs are going to be more engineering based? Do you think it's taken the right steps, or do you wish it went into a different direction? What do you think?
I think it's definitely going the right way, because when we're looking at the skills that kids will need, you know, for the jobs, you know, we always talk about this. We're preparing children for jobs that don't even exist yet. We are, and essentially, if we can't get them to think critically about whatever it is that they're doing, they're not going to be able to be successful in those jobs. And I don't want them to wait until they're in high school or in university before they start critically thinking or using systematic thinking to really solve these issues that they're looking at. And they can do that at, you know, 10 years old and younger, you know, as long as you're providing them with the right parameters to do that. So I think it's definitely going the right direction, because we need the skills of a critical thinker rather than someone who can follow steps and get to the answer you want them to get to. I think that's the wrong direction. And so now that we're kind of moving beyond that, I think that's, you know, a lot better.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something we're seeing in a lot of other subjects as well, where teachers are being more facilitators. So when your students are doing a collaborative experiment, how are you facilitating that critical thinking? Because like you said, a lot of times you're doing something where you don't know the answer. So what are steps that you take to facilitate that critical thinking?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because that's the thing that teachers um, have the hardest time getting their mind around is, what do I do if I don't know the answer? And so I always, every time I talk to teachers about teaching science or teaching engineering, what they should be doing, we talk about using Socratic questioning, really open-ended, rather than just giving answers, asking them why they think that and how do they think they could get there. You know, that way you're kind of pulling the information out of them based off of whatever, you know, you've taught them, or whatever they've learned in their own background knowledge. So I think being able to ask those important questions and having those conversations about their thinking process, and then you're able to kind of guide them in the right way. Like, why do you think that what came before that? What caused that? And so developing that systematic thinking through really pointed questions that will allow them to kind of move in the direction they should without you having to give them the answers.
Fantastic. So when you're doing this process, you're asking them those questions. How do you know your students are getting it? You know, they're able to process what you're telling them. They're able to work with their peers. How can you tell where they get it? And you're like, wow, this kid is doing a great job.
Well, I think, especially with the engineering process, there's a lot of checking in with the students as you go through it. And so I think when you're stopping and you're asking these questions and you go off to the next group and you come back around, I mean, it's really obvious when they're not getting it. because then, they're getting frustrated and they're not sure what to do. But, when they are, you see a lot of this kind of like glowy moments of, oh my God, I got it. So I think that's, really what you're looking for, is that kind of less obvious behavior and interaction between, them and their partners, or the way they talk about it, because, their attitudes will change if they're feeling confident like they can do it. And of course, if they don't, you'll find infighting in the groups and things like that going on. So it's really important that, as much as teachers love project-based learning, that it's set up really well, because that's, I think, is the fault of project-based learning, is that if teachers will just say, oh, okay, you can just go and do it and it'll be fine. But that's not really getting them where they need to be. And if it's not set up properly, then you'll end up with all of these kind of variables that don't work for whatever the project is. So if it's well thought out and well planned on the teacher's side, and it takes more time to do it for sure, but then the outcome is so much better because they've been guided based off of, their own levels. Of course, it's different for elementary school kids, to get them to the answer that you need to. So ultimately, you have to have those conversations to see if they're getting to where they need to go.
Fantastic. So one of the things that worries a lot of teachers is whenever you're doing a lot of project-based learning with their peers is the management of the classroom. So what are some of the tricks that you use to help manage, especially 9 and 10-year-olds who are excited to work with tools that maybe they don't get the opportunity to? What are some of those management strategies that you use to help make sure that they stay on task?
I rule with an iron fist. No, I mean, I think, it is about the kids knowing that you have limits in their class, because I think when they feel like they can just get away with, acting a fool with particular materials, that's when things can go really badly. So, I'll make sure to sit down at the very beginning and have conversations about the materials, what the expectations are. And I usually say, we're not doing any warnings, or we're not doing any, and I set that up even though, they know that, but I'm still saying to them, look, this is the limit. You are not messing around with these tools, because that could lead to something really bad. That could lead to someone getting injured, whatever. So, and we don't want that, because then, you can't do these things. And the kids are like 99% of the time pretty respectful of that, because usually the kids who are, who might act a little bit out and be a little more crazy during these activities, they get the most out of these activities, because they're able to kind of express themselves in a way that they don't usually get. And so usually those kids are way more engaged. And so that's actually quite nice to see how they are so much more switched on. And so, when you're talking about behavior management strategies, it's like being very clear with them about what the expectation is and how far they should know, how far they can push you. And if it's not far, then you should be able to keep them, kind of under wraps. But I've definitely had to tell kids, Kate, you know what, this is not working for you. So, you can sit and watch. And, you get one session where they sit and watch, they don't want to do that again, so if they know that that's what's going to happen, they're a lot less likely to do something that's going to end up sitting and watching. And I've had kids had to do that, definitely. And then later that day, they come up and I'm really sorry. Can I not sit on to the next one? So, it's kids want to do this stuff, so.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I have used in my classroom, if you would have asked me last summer, I had never heard of these, and they are SDG goals. I've used them in my ELA classes with our writing and kind of collaborative times and our gratitude sessions where we come together. Could you explain what SDG goals are and how you incorporate these into your classes?
Sure. The SDGs are the Sustainability Development Goals of the UN. And they were put together in 2015, and there's 17 goals. And they cover a range of issues that are facing the globe today. And so everywhere from climate action to sustainability to water, life on land, all kinds of different parts that basically had been identified by the UN. 198 countries signed off on it, saying these are the issues that are facing us today, and this is not sustainable for us to continue living on the earth, again, in a sustainable manner. And so it's been agreed upon by these countries to set goals depending on the country, because everyone has different ones that affect them. And every country is meant to help move and achieve, move in a direction to help achieve these goals. So students now are learning a lot about them because teachers are starting to bring them into the classroom. And so for me, I had been teaching stuff about the SDGs without knowing what they were called, because I was working with a charity called Solar Buddy. And Solar Buddy makes solar panels and sends them to children who are living with energy poverty around the world. And so I had gotten together with them and had written a curriculum for them. And so, because they had come to my school and they didn't have anything, and I thought, well, this is amazing. And so I'd been working with them, and then started hearing about the SDGs and really what that was about. And I didn't realize there was a name for this, because of course you talk to kids about taking care of the environment, not using plastics and blah, blah, blah. But having them all together in this cohesive unit was just such an amazing thing to have as a teacher, to be able to then teach those to kids and to talk about them in a really well packaged way. So each of the goals has targets underneath them, and those targets will help you kind of understand better what that particular goal is about. So when I teach them, sometimes I just teach about the particular target, about particular targets. Sometimes I just talk about the goal, depending on what we're covering. So in our class, sometimes I talk about it in morning work. When we come in, I'll find a news article, and we'll talk about it. Or I do specific lessons on it, because I've started integrating into my school. And so now I've rewritten our curriculum to match up teaching the SDGs to grade 2, 3, and 4. That has aligned to our humanities and our science, because I had written that and then aligned those to that. So now we've kind of got this, three kind of parts of our humanities and science lessons, which include now the SDGs.
And so there are 17 of these goals. What are some that you really identify with, that you like to bring into your classroom the most? Because you can't do them all, but you can take a handful of them and, identify with the most.
I think for me, and I think a big part of why I got into science and why I do feel it's really important to be teaching science at this age, and being a woman in this area of teaching, certainly is gender equality, because of course that's a big issue. Equality is kind of even broader when we're talking about religion, and we're talking about sexual orientation, things like that. So I think, we're just talking about equality for people, and, quality education. Of course, I'm a teacher, so that's really important to me. Renewable energy, with working with Solar Buddy, because I really think that that's, the way of the future, is looking at renewable energy sources and encouraging companies to be a part of that. And so I think those 3 are the ones that I really personally feel are important. And plastic is one of those things that I don't know what it is. Every time I touch something that's plastic, I'm like, 500 years, Tia, 500 years, this is going to be around for. And I had just plastic guilt or something. And so, just trying to be mindful of that in my daily life, because here in China, we use plastic a lot. I get toilet paper that's plastic, that's wrapped in plastic. And, everything is like that. And so just trying to limit the amount of plastic, that I'm consuming, and using, metal straws and things like that, just to try and alleviate some of that. But I think there's something in all of them. But I remember when I first started with the SDGs, I was so overwhelmed by just the sheer number of things that we're essentially doing wrong on the planet. And to try and take them all on at once is really overwhelming. So, I try to stick with those ones, but certainly I see evidence of these things being important every day, all over the place.
Fantastic. So how have you used those SDGs to help promote student agency? Because the idea is that kids really identify with one or some of these, and they're able to take action in their own community to make a difference. So how do you promote student agency with SDGs?
try to take opportunities as they present themselves. So, when Greta Thunberg was a lot in the news about what she was doing, I brought articles in about that. We watched her speech that she had given, the address, and that was appropriate at that moment. And so now, well, I guess I say now, but we're in April and we haven't been in school since January here. But we had projects at the beginning of the school year that we wanted to do with the kids were meant to focus on being able to express themselves. And so I saw that as an opportunity to do something really great where I could combine STEM and SDGs and really great projects. So I found a whole bunch of great projects on tryengineering.org, and I aligned them with all kinds of SDGs and said, okay, well, this one fits with that, this one fits with that. And each class in my year group took a topic. So my topic was renewable energy, there was pollution, different things that the different classes took. And the kids were then charged with the idea of putting together this project, writing a speech or like a presentation for it, and solving an SDG issue using STEM. And so my students ended up having to do a presentation in front of all of their peers and their parents. And so there's about 400 kids and parents watching these kids come up on stage, talk about their project, and really passionately express themselves on something that they all of a sudden just really felt passion for. I was really, really surprised about how well they did, because, you do these projects, you set them up, and I never truly trust they're going to work out, even though they always do. I'm always like, it's just not going to work. Because, a teacher, you just stress about it working. And, I just have to believe that it's going to work. And that's what I have to tell my colleagues. I was like, just believe, just trust it will work, even though you don't believe me. And I don't believe myself sometimes. And, they built these beautiful projects that were solutions for these really true SDG issues. And they learned all about them. And then, last week or the week before, we were writing letters, and a lot of the kids wrote letters about their particular SDG, the one that they had researched and created a solution for. So it's now it's in their minds, and now it's something that they're aware of and they're thinking about and they're talking about with their families. So that to me is the most important thing, is that it's impacted them.
Fantastic. So I want to kind of go back a little bit. You mentioned that your experience with the writing curriculum. What is the process like for you? Is this something you sit down with as a team or with administration? What are you looking for when you are writing curriculum?
I think for me, I'm looking for this kind of 21st century approach where kids are looking at real life issues, real life situations that they could be part of the problem or part of the solution for. When the reason I started with the science is because they didn't have enough science. I thought that's not right for our kids to get to year 6 and have not enough science. So we started with that. So I, looked at that and rewrote that. And then when I started looking at the SDGs, I was like, this is a perfect marriage, is STEM and science with the SDGs and putting those together, because then you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone sort of thing. And, I think it's been really powerful to see how you can put those things together. And then when we're talking about writing, for example, we were doing persuasive writing. I said, well, this is a great opportunity for the kids to purposely write. They wrote to CEOs and they wrote to mayors and all these different people to talk about the issue that they felt was important, and to persuade them to, give up this or try that. And, you can feel their passion so much more than if I'm just writing about whether or not we should be wearing uniforms. Those are tired, kind of old, topics. You could write about them, sure, but why not just up your ante a little bit and make it so much more powerful that they're going to be researching about the plastics in the ocean. And I mean, I'm learning a lot about it too when they're coming up with all of their research, and then they're writing about real true problems that we're having. And so we're preparing them for something that's going to affect them as adults, and they're going to say, I know about that. So when I'm looking at this curriculum, I'm thinking, what is going to best prepare them for the future? What's going to prepare them to be contributing members of society and to be empathetic loving, caring, global citizens.
Fantastic. So you mentioned how your students have really been passionate about different topics, whether it's, the plastics in the ocean or that sort of thing. What is something you have learned about your students going through this process? Because I'm sure there's been times you're like, wow, I'm really blown away by what this student is doing. What is something you've learned?
I mean, I think you really learn.
Oh,
Bless you.
yeah.
I think you really learn a lot about, who they are and where they come from. Because when you talk to them about why they like this particular thing or why they're excited about it, you kind of start to hear about, the animal that they love. I have one little girl who loves animals, and she's got her own pets, and she's always talking about animals. And the one thing she wants to talk about is life on land. And so she wants to talk about taking care of animals. And because you can connect their heart's desires and the things that they're concerned about with these SDGs, because it really shows that they're kids, but the concerns and the things that they love and care about are the same things that we as adults are. It's just, it's just a slightly different level, of course, but you can build that passion in them by allowing them to explore areas that they're interested in. And so I think I've learned a lot about what they feel is important or how they see the world around them. Kids who've lived here for a long time are always talking about pollution, because that is something that is part of our day here. We check the weather, we're checking the pollution. What's the pollution today? That's a normal thing for us to say. And so, it's you do learn a lot about what's important to them as people.
Fantastic. So what have you learned about yourself, both as a teacher and as a person going through this process?
I mean, I think I've learned a lot about the importance of how you build this kind of passion into for the SDGs or for STEM. And for me, I think the thing that was the catalyst, the biggest thing for me that was the kickoff, was the understanding that empathy is the most important thing here. And it doesn't matter how much they learn about plastics or building sustainable cities, if they don't have that feeling about it, it doesn't matter, because they'll just forget about it. But if they build that empathy and they understand why it's important that we help each other, or why it's important we take care of the earth, we can't go anywhere if they don't have that. So I think I've learned a lot about that, because if it's like when you're teaching a language and you have to explain the rules of a sentence and how you put it together. This intrinsically because you've grown up speaking English your whole life. But once you have to explain it to a kid, you're going, wait, why do I have to put that there? And why do I change it this way? And why is it, why is this irregular? It's the same thing as as I've been teaching this, I've gained a lot as far as why this is important, and like what is it that makes us want to protect the environment or protect animals or whatever it is. And if we don't have that empathy built inside of us or understand how to get there, then I can't impart that onto kids, because I can't just say you should care about the environment. I have to be able to show them why, and they have to get there on their own, because that's their own self building into that. So I think that's the thing I've learned most.
Fantastic. So how do you build that empathy into your students? You mentioned that word. It's a big, big word. I bring it to my classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
How do you bring it to your students?
I think it's just about exposure. It's about, being able to relate to it when they can see other kids going through something that they haven't gone through. Because the kids at our school are, pretty protected. They live very privileged lives, and, they're very lucky. And so, being able to show them what other people live like, or what is building all of, what's causing the pollution, or what's causing all of these different things that we're trying to eliminate or prevent. I think I think that's really what we have to make sure that we're spending our time on, is making sure that they can build that. But by doing that, you have to show them where is it that this is going to come from? I can't do it once. That's the thing. Is we've talked about, I've talked with teachers before about, well, maybe if I teach the SDGs once a week, then that'll work because they've seen it. It's like, well, that's not gonna do it. It isn't gonna do it. Anything you learn once a week, you're not gonna get that same feeling as if you've seen it. Maybe you read a story about it on Monday and you see a video on it on to Wednesday, and it has to be all these different exposures so students see the importance of it. And so I talk a lot about the things that are important to me. When I got my metal straws, I was like, oh yeah, guys, look, I got these metal straws. I'm like, oh yeah, we have a whole discussion about how straws are bad for the environment and what we can do to use them, to not use them or use something else or whatever. So I think it's about showing yourself and what's important to you, and then to turn around and have them dig out more details, and then for you to return it. So it's this kind of symbiotic relationship of figuring out what's important and why it's important, and having those harder conversations, because I have had situations where, we were doing our Solar Buddy project, and I had some students who just were not getting the fact that energy poverty is a really serious thing. And I felt like we failed them because they didn't get it. And I realized it was because we hadn't spent enough time front loading them with the details of what energy poverty is, what the consequences are. And if we're just trying to slap something on and be like, oh, here you go, we did it, check mark, checkbox, we're done, that's not really making that impact that we want. So, having that conversation about, well, this is what energy poverty is really about. And this is really how you are affected by it. And it may not be you, but the reason why you should be concerned about it is this. So I think that's really, really important, is to just keep having those conversations even when they're tough.
Fantastic. So when you look over the field of education in general, are we doing enough to bring empathy to the classroom? When you, like I said, you look over the larger scale, are we doing enough with bringing empathy to the classroom?
I mean, I want to be positive and say yes, but I think we're just not there yet. I think we're going in the right direction. I do, but I think it's going to take a lot of changes from the top down. Because I think if a school is dedicated to the SDGs and working from that through that lens, then yes, then absolutely, because that's what's going to come out of that. But I think not everyone is ready for that. And, I think school in general, and, we've chatted about this, about how, school was set up during the Industrial Revolution to get people trained to go and work in factories. And we still kind of work it in the same way. And, that really needs to stop. We need to be moving forward and thinking, more like these countries, like Scandinavian countries, that are really thinking about breaking down the classroom and turning it into something different, so that it can serve the needs of the kids that we have now, so that they can be critical thinkers, that they can use systems thinking. And so I think there are voices out there like myself, like yourself, that, that are trying to, stand on the top of the mountain yelling, let's do this. But I think that, there needs to be more, and there needs to be, we need to be getting more administrators on board. And there are, and I know they have the things that they need to hit too. But I think the difference is that some people don't think that you can get to your standards that you're mandated by your state or your province and still get to, and hit these things too. But you can do both. I know this because I do them. And so, you can get your standards and you can teach in this really new kind of way with new topics and new ideas. It takes work, but it takes a community of people. And, Twitter has been great for that. Like, we share so much stuff on there. And, once you share something, then somebody else comes to you, and back and forth. And so I think it's just about growing this community that we have of amazing professionals who really are trying to do something to change the way we're teaching.
Fantastic. So for someone that's going to watch this that is not familiar with SDGs, empathy, when you have a school that adopts the school-wide approach that's able to blend it together with their mandated standards and curriculum, what is the end result? What are we going to see from our teachers? What are we going to see from our students who adopt this blended type of learning?
I think you're going to see really creative people who have a passion and a heart for the world. I think to see change, and I think it creates a real confidence in people. I think my kids, especially, I have a group of girls who, before COVID and everything that's happened, we were practicing and getting together and writing a podcast. And these were girls who are excellent at everything that they do. Doesn't matter what I give them, they are always at the top. They're always doing the best things. And I was trying to find something that would challenge them beyond what we were already doing. And they were all about this idea of doing a podcast. And so, for about 2 months prior to leaving, we were meeting twice a week and talking about how to do podcasting and do all this kind of stuff. But my point is that what it did is created this confidence in these girls to talk about issues that some adults are not knowledgeable to talk about. So I think if we are able to create schools of this, we're going to be creating some really amazing leaders who are going to be able to affect some real change in the future.
Fantastic. So if you can look into your crystal ball, okay, where do you see your growth as a science teacher going 5 to 10 years from now? Do you find yourself being more immersed into SDGs, the STEM type learning? Where do you see your growth as an educator?
Well, I think I really, I've made some changes lately in my own job and where I'm going to be next year. And, I think a lot of it's because I have in my own self this desire to keep going with the SDGs and to keep going with STEM and be part of this kind of movement and research that can really help change schools. And I want to help facilitate that in schools. So I think, I would like to see, ultimately I'd like to start my own school, but, that's something that's, far from now, but I would love to see an SDG STEM school where that's the lens through which you teach and learn. Because I think once you give that agency to kids to be able to look at issues that affect them and look at issues that concern them, and then teach all the other things through it. Like I'm teaching persuasive writing through the SDGs. You can do all of these things. So I think that we need to change the lens that we're looking at education through. And I think in 5-10 years, I think it's growing. It's growing a lot. I'm a teach SDGs ambassador, and that has really given me a platform to talk about these issues and to help my school that I'm working at now kind of get more into the SDGs and see it as something that is important and something that is worthy of the time that teachers spend. So I think, moving forward 5 to 10 years, yeah, I'd love to see myself leading a school or developing curriculum or just taking opportunities that I've received over the last couple of years, been able to do because I've been online and because of speaking and things like that. And I just want to keep going with that because it's so exciting right now to be able to do that. Because once you talk to a teacher about this who hasn't heard about it before or who's been afraid to try it, it's amazing what happens when they start and when they share that with you and when they talk about it. And I'm just really excited about that.
Fantastic. So how has your why for teaching, has it changed over the years? It's stayed the same? How has your why developed through your career?
I think when you get into teaching, you have different ideas, and then I've grown a lot in the last decade, and so I'm moving into 13 years, I think, and so it's changed, but I think at the same time, the thing that gets me about teaching is kids being excited and kids learning and just being happy to be there. Because I taught high school for a little while, and honestly I just couldn't do it because the kids were just too cool for school. They didn't matter what I did, they weren't excited about it. I'm the only teacher using iPads, they didn't care. I'm the only teacher getting them to make videos, they don't care. you know, and so that's when I switched to elementary, because I was teaching at high school and elementary at the same time. And I was like, man, these little kids love everything. And, you know, you teach them about this stuff and they absolutely love it. And they have a million questions, and I'm probably the smartest person they know. So, you know, that's great. So it's always really fun, because I think the coolest part of being a teacher is being the person that helps them to be better and to help them to learn something new that they didn't know before. Because then I know that when I'm teaching them about the SDGs or I'm teaching them STEM, they're building something inside of them, and they're picturing their futures, and they're seeing what they could do for the world. And that is just such an incredible feeling, knowing that when they say, oh my God, like, oh, I didn't know that before. That's why I teach, because that's the exciting part. You know, I don't like paperwork. I don't like any of that other stuff, but man, it is fun when those kids get excited about something.
Fantastic. I love it. And I love the passion coming coming from your voice. I can tell this is something that's very important to you. So for a teacher to come up to you, okay, they're a little apprehensive about going this direction of STEM, and SDGs. What is a couple bits of advice you can give them?
I would say find someone that you can talk to about it. You know, someone that you think is doing it, whether it's someone that can support you online or someone who can support you at your school, and find something you care about, because it doesn't matter if it's, you know, if you're talking about STEM or you're talking about SDGs and you're just doing something just to pay it lip service, then you're doing the wrong thing. You got to pick something that you feel excited about. You read a news article and you go, man, I want to share that with my kids. Or you see something happening and you go, oh, wow, we should discuss that or talk, or whatever. But find something that you care about, something that excites you, something that you feel is important, because that's how you impart that to your kids. Because it doesn't necessarily mean that all my kids care about plastic. But they do know that it's something that I'm concerned about, and they might find something else that's important to them, like the little girl who loves animals. She's very, very focused on that. So when we're reading or we're talking, she's always bringing it back to that. But that's because, you know, I think I've modeled that idea that it's important to be passionate. It's important to find something that drives you and that you love. And so I think that, you know, is really important. And then I think the last thing is just trust that it'll work. And if it doesn't, that's okay. It doesn't happen for me sometimes. And, you know, and I still have to say to the kids, I go, well, it didn't work, you know, and it's fine when we talk about why. And, you know, we did an experiment with like rockets, and it did not work at all. And I got up in front of, you know, all of the kids in my grade group, and I said, sometimes that happens. So we wouldn't get ice cream if people didn't make mistakes. And what you're going to do now is you're going to improve on this design, and we'll try it again. And that was a really easy way to you know, kind of fix that mistake, but also just to demonstrate this is how real science happens, and this is how we get there. So as much as you might not feel confident in making those mistakes in front of your kids, it's so valuable, because then they see that it's okay to make mistakes, and that this is how we deal with mistakes. And that's how we get to good places, by making mistakes. If you don't make mistakes, you're not learning anything.
Fantastic. All right. Now, you know, I'm all about, excuse me, we are one team. What does that mean to you?
Well, you know, I've been thinking about it, and I think it's interesting because the idea is so all-encompassing for teachers, and it is all about, I mean, it reaches really far, yet still kind of like keeps you together. Because the idea is that it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're into science like me, or you're into history, or you're into math, which I'm not into, but, you know, it doesn't matter that I might not be into that, but, you know, my closest colleague at my work, she's a math teacher and she loves math. And we're always helping and sharing with each other. But that's because her and I, we're on a team together. We're like our own kind of, we're helping each other out thing. And that's what, you know, We Are One Team is all about, is that it doesn't matter where you come from or what background you have or how much training or you do or don't have. It's all about the fact that we are one team and we all have one goal, and we're all here for our students, and we're all here to educate them and to change the world through education. And I think that's really what the We Are One Team is about.
Fantastic. Well, listen, Tia, it has been a wonderful conversation. There are so many people that are going to get so much out of this, so many teachers, teachers of the sciences, ELA, history. There's really a lot that's going to be taken from this as far as building that empathy, building that confidence, that collaborative work environment, and really the fact that we can bring these SDGs together and that they're so user friendly all across all subjects. So I can't thank you enough for coming on here and talking about all this.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been lovely.
Absolutely. We're going to go off the record and I have another couple follow-ups for you. Okay. So you have a great day. And again, happy teaching.